Hello, and welcome back to Sex, Love, and the Self. As we begin the last month of the year, it feels like the perfect time to do a little recap. I gotta say, this year has been a doozy, and I don't think it's just for me. I think it feels like so many people in my immediate circle, my dear friends, even in kind of the public world, have been really struggling this year. This was a big one for a lot of us. I was joking with a friend of mine that ever since the pandemic, we keep thinking next year's going to be better, next year's going to be better. And I really think it will. I really think that we're getting there. In fact, I think that every year has been better. We're just sloughing off old versions of ourselves collectively, as a community, as a society, as a species, perhaps. And that process takes a little time. It's rough. In my personal world, it felt a lot like blowing my life up. I blew my life up. And it was a conscious decision, for sure. I left a relationship in which I had invested everything, including leaving my life in the United States, moving to a new country, and now starting a new single life in a new apartment, in a new city, in a new language. And logistically, it's just been rough. I literally am living in the third world, which is wonderful. I love it here. I'm living a beautifully luxurious life in an incredible place. But there were a lot of struggles that came along with that transition. Logistic ones. Like, for instance, registering my car in my name was such a nightmare. Going through the visa paperwork, so complicated. Then I sold the car and bought a new one. Getting that handled was ridiculously difficult. There's been language barriers and financial barriers, and it's been physically hard. I got sick several times, which is so unlike me. But the biggest thing, probably, obviously, is that it's been really emotionally hard. It was difficult to let go of the dreams that I'd had, the future that I had sort of projected my happiness into in the relationship that I thought I was going to have with this Colombian man. I had to let go of all the hopes and joys that I had held. And I felt truly lonely for the first time in my life, which is sort of a strange thing because I like to be alone. But this level of loneliness, this level of alienation was heavy for sure. The thing is, as is always true for me in these big moments in my life when it feels like everything is collapsing or even just one big thing is collapsing, I learned some big lessons. And I feel like they still come down to self-love. I always go back to that. And I can't really pinpoint when self-love became a thing for me. I think perhaps it was in my early 20s when I was leaving the traditional Christian church and exploring a different kind of spirituality, a more personal one, a more energetic and earth-based version. And I stuck with it, and it became such a profound foundation of my personal spiritual journey, but also my work, because I saw such incredible changes in my life through the practice of developing and evolving, deepening my self-love. I freed myself from insecurity and from jealousy. I freed myself from devaluing myself in relationships. And when I say freed myself, I don't mean that I don't experience those things. Of course I still do. But it's to a much lesser degree, from a much calmer place, from a much more high-minded and self-loving perspective. Learning to love myself helped me love my body. I even change it. I love my body more now than I ever have at 43 years old, which is kind of crazy and just actually true. Self-love gave me the confidence to change my whole life, to follow this dream in this relationship to Colombia. And when that relationship and those dreams blew up, or rather, I blew them up, I gleaned a lot of new information about myself and a lot of ways that I thought I had been loving myself that weren't really as deep or concretely founded as I had originally thought. I realized that I'd been putting big future expectations on people, on circumstances, and even, like I'd mentioned, projecting my joy into the future. I was ignoring the fact that I wasn't happy, writing things off that were not working for me, believing that it's okay, it's gonna get better, it's gonna get better. I learned I'd been giving too much to potential partners, to people in general, letting myself be kind of walked on, taken advantage of. And one of the biggest lessons in that vein was that I realized that I gave as a manner of protecting myself, as a means of protection. Because if I was the one that was always providing, I was then the one in power. And it helped me to uncover a complex relationship that I've had with receiving love, support, because I felt like that would obligate me in some way and give my power to someone else, that I would have to kind of repay those favors or gestures of support or love. I also learned I'd been waiting for someone or something, the universe in some form, to guide me, to bring me some opportunity that would lead me forward, that would show me the path. And I learned that I've got to take that role myself. I have to take that responsibility, that control, which of course is terrifying to look out into the future of possibilities, the innumerable possibilities to create joy and financial stability and strong relationships in my life. But I had to pick a path and move down it. And of course, I still hope for and look for and believe in and see and receive signs from the universe. But now they feel more like validations, ideas, encouragement. And I think the universe is talking to me through me, that the things that I want, the things that I crave, the things that I feel like I need are coming from a place of my soul's desires, the desires of my spiritual self, which is an incredibly freeing feeling. I can trust that what I want is also the best thing for me on a soul level. It's so crazy how we limit ourselves without even realizing it. For so long, I told myself that things that I wanted mustn't be, quote, right, kind of inherently because I wanted them. I realized that my perspective had been that I shouldn't want anything, but that the universe was going to bring me something, and I just had to be patient. Or that I wasn't doing a good enough job at something, and so the thing I wanted was being withheld from me. For example, I'd wanted to move out of the US and live a life of adventure for a really long time. But until I met the Colombian, I didn't feel like I could do that. I didn't feel like I could just walk away from my life in the United States to do something else because I just wanted to. And so I think I manifested that relationship with him to make the transition, to pull me out of the United States. What better reason is there to leave a life of stability and comfort, if not for the possibility of a real magical love? But because that relationship failed, because those dreams didn't come true, I learned that I can do this alone. As Patreon subscribers know, my ex-boyfriend, in an attempt to be incredibly supportive and knowing that I was going to have to interact in Spanish to find an apartment and get settled here, had offered to help. And he stayed for like 10 days when I first got back here after we broke up, helping me find an apartment, try to nail something down. And it wasn't until he left and I did it on my own that I actually found the right place. I found people to help me get my car registered. I found people to help me to get my car sold and a new one purchased. I found people to help me with the visa process, all on my own. I learned how to give myself pleasure, how to love my life, walking around this incredible city all alone, blissfully alone. I realized I needed to have more people in my life, more social interaction. I needed to be able to interact with humans more often. And I did that alone. I got out there and made connections and made friends alone. I'm even starting to learn how to receive pleasure from those people. I found new outlets for my work. There was just so much that I learned that I had been denying myself the credit that I'm capable, that I can do this shit on my own. And while it might look like I chose the wrong thing when I left the United States to people from the outside, perhaps the best lesson I've learned is that I was right. I can trust myself. I was right to leave the US. I am so much happier here than I was when I was in the States. And it's not the fault of the United States, nor the people there, nor my life there, none of that. I just realized how much I'm fed by a life of adventure, by new experiences. And that even if they don't, quote, work out the way that I thought they would, that doesn't mean that they weren't right. That doesn't mean that they didn't serve me. I have grown. I am so much happier with who I am now because I've had these experiences, these quote failures. I think if I can dial in, if we, you, all of us, can dial in more and more to our spiritual selves, we can ever more confidently trust that what we want and what we feel is not just ego-based or societally based or culturally based or things dictated to us from the outside. If we feel things, if we desire things deeply from a spiritual space, those things are right for us. Those things are meant for us. And we have the ability and the power and the capability of going after those dreams. And that because our soul self wants that, because it comes from a spiritual deep place, the universe, God, whatever, is there to support us in pursuing those dreams, even if it looks like they don't work out at first. I thought I had a good handle on self-love. I would have described myself as very independent and self-sufficient in my life in the US. But I didn't realize that I was limiting myself in so many ways. I would never have fathomed that I could live by myself in a foreign country and be happy doing that. I genuinely thought I needed help. I genuinely believed that I wasn't going to be able to manage a life here by myself without the support of the wild man. And I'm so excited that I've learned otherwise. Now it seems like I could move almost anywhere in the world and figure it out without too much fear. I could change almost any part of my life and find a way to live with joy. I could face down almost any challenge that comes my way, knowing that all I have to do is follow myself, my deep heart, my desires, my spiritual self's guidance. Self-love now looks different to me than it ever has before, or perhaps just more deeply layered. It looks like trusting ourselves, not only our capabilities, but our desires, the things that drive us forward. It looks like being ourselves, loudly, publicly, without shame, dressing the way that we want, acting the way we want, with respect always, of course, sharing our ideas, again, always with respect. Self-love now looks like giving ourselves pleasure and opening ourselves up to receiving it. It looks like allowing ourselves to be vulnerable enough to receive it. It looks like bravely letting go of those parts of us and our lives that are no longer working when we know they're no longer working. Self-love looks like profoundly believing in ourselves, both knowing that we can do things, that we can trust ourselves, and commanding the respect that the way that we believe about ourselves, the precious creatures we believe ourselves to be, is valid and worth respecting, worth celebrating. So I hope you take time this month to reflect on that, on where you've been and what you've done. Of course, take a minute to celebrate that shit. Go through your photos and remind yourself of all of the incredible things that you've done or achieved or just participated in this year. But I also want us all to take a minute to go back and look at the ways that we've changed and grown, the new versions of ourselves that we're becoming, the old things, the paradigms that no longer work for us, the belief systems that we've left behind, the self-abuse or discredit that we've dropped, that we've stopped beating ourselves with. I hope that we all give ourselves just a few minutes to see the ways that we're doing life differently, that we're showing up differently in the world, and that we use those things, those awarenesses and acknowledgements to empower ourselves to keep going, keep moving forward, keep believing that next year is going to be better, and keep loving ourselves. I'm going to be back in January with some exciting new stuff. I told everybody in a TikTok video last year that I wanted to use 2023 to become a badass goddess witch. And I've loved working toward that goal all year long. So in January, I'm going to be able to offer some new stuff. I'm doing personal growth classes, sort of becoming the cheerleader to you as you change your life, offering guidance and advice if you want it, helping you to stay on track when you need it, a mentorship, so to speak. I'm also going to start doing tarot readings if that's something that interests you. Both of those things will be available on my website, and you can go and pre-register now. I hope you all have an incredible end of your year and that you start 2024 with genuine optimism and true excitement because you deserve that, and that energy will drive you forward. Numerologically speaking, 2024 should be a year of abundance for all of us. And I hope that you take your personal changes, the ways that you've grown, the shifts that you've made in yourself and your life, and drive into this year of abundance with joy and optimism and hope. Have a great December. I'll see you in 2024. If you liked this podcast, please remember to subscribe. And consider supporting us on Patreon, where you'll get the deeper dives, the more spiritual elements, and the hows of loving ourselves and our lives more. Learn more at patreon.com/Jacqueline Lene. And if you'd like to create more self-love, live with more joy, and transform your life, check out my website for all kinds of personal support resources, books, workshops, those classes I mentioned, and the tarot card readings will be there soon. To help you transform your life, live with more joy, more self-love. All of that is available at authorjacquelinelene.com. That's JACLYNLANAE. Thanks for listening.